Today in our 2016 Ford F-150, we're going to take a look at and show you how to install the Timbren Rear Suspension Enhancement System, part number TFRTT1504E. Now the need for a suspension upgrade typically comes from hauling. You're going to have either something in the bed of the truck or a large trailer and it's causing sag in the back of the vehicle. We've got about 1,000 pounds worth of water here in the back of the truck. We measured this before adding the water and it was at about 40 inches. After adding the water, it's down about 3.5 inches. So what we're going to do is put the Timbrens on and we'll show how we can take the weight off of this rear suspension system and allow those to do a lot of the work for us. And when we've got our truck loaded down like this, we're causing the rear suspension to do a lot of work. That causes friction, heat, the system's going to heat up a little bit, and over time it's just going to fatigue. It's not going to work as well as it did before. By adding our suspension upgrade, we should be able to take a lot of that pressure off of that system, allowing our truck to drive and operate a lot more like normal, even when we've got it loaded right up to its safe load limit. Now we can see what a difference is made with that Timbren installed. We've got the same load in the bed of the truck, and we've reduced that amount of sag by about 50%. We've brought it up about 2 inches to kind of split the difference from unloaded to fully loaded like we've got it. Now what this does, as we talked about before, this really reduces all that strain that's going to be on that rear suspension. It helps to absorb it. It's going to extend the life of our suspension, especially if we do a lot of towing. As a side effect to this, we've also brought the front end down a little bit. That puts more pressure on the front tires. We talked about returning to the factory characteristics earlier, and by adding the pressure back on those front tires, our steering is going to feel more like normal, our braking, and also the suspension geometry is returned, so we won't have to worry about abnormal tire wear. Now here's a look at what the Timbren is going to look like installed. As you can see, as compared to the original jounce bumper, that just gives you an idea of the size difference there. This was basically only used for extreme overload situations. So whenever this part of the axle, you'll see how that was contoured. Whenever that part of the axle got all the way up to about this point, that's when it started to make contact. So that was just in extreme situations. With our new Timbren, you can see we're going to have about 1 inch of a gap here, maybe 1.25 inches. So as our suspension starts to sag, this is going to engage much more quickly and give us much more benefit. Now with our gap being so much smaller here, this allows for more engagement of that Timbren. Essentially that gives us a lot more load leveling capability, where this was basically just when it was extremely overloaded. This is going to take pressure almost the whole time when we're towing. Now as we're traveling down the road under normal circumstances, a lot of times they're not even going to engage. That little bit of a gap still allows for a nice comfortable ride. Then once we get that load on, that's when they start doing the job. Now overall, the installation process is really straightforward. We've got our custom bracket here on the upper portion, just a single bolt into an already existing weld nut where you remove your old jounce bumper. This is going to go right back in place. Then to give us a great flat spot, rather than our Timbren coming down on the rounded top of the axle, we've got a nice flat perch that we're going to be able to put in there. It's going to allow it to really work very effectively. Now your upper and lower bracket, they're heavy duty steel. They've got the black powder coat finish on them. And we've got AON rubber springs. These are hollow, so they're designed to have a minimal impact initially, but as we compress these more and more, they become stiffer and stiffer. So as our loads go up, the stiffness of our spring is also going to go up. Now these springs have a 7,000 pound capacity each. That gives us a total of 14,000 pounds in load handling capability. One thing you really need to keep in mind though, this doesn't raise the capability or the weight rating of your truck. You need to abide by that. This is just going to allow us not to put so much of a load on the rear suspension and also return a lot of the handling characteristics that we would have typically had from the factory. Here's a look at our truck going through our test course with the load in the bed, but with no suspension enhancement. As you can see, we've got a lot of movement up and down in the suspension here. Not only does this affect the up and down in the truck, but also the body roll is affected as we go through our wider corners. Now as we go through our bumps without our Timbrens, you can see what force is generated up and down and all the strain that's being put on the suspension. After the Timbrens, with our load in, you can see they're already engaged, they're making contact and helping to support the rear of our truck. We're not going to have near the body roll going side to side that we did before, because these are designed to work independently from one another. Here's a good look at our Timbrens installed, but with no load in the back of the truck. As you can see, they're not really going to engage at all under normal driving situations. They do make contact here and there just to help smooth out our ride. Now, to begin your installation, you want to have your rear suspension hanging slightly, so you'll need to support it with some jack stands. We've gone off of our hitch here and then just allowed our wheels to come down a little bit. What you're looking for is just to get some space between your axle and your bump stop here so you can work. On the passenger side, we're going to pull down the heat shield here for the spare tire. The spare tire is typically here. We've already taken that down. It'll allow you to see better, but also it kind of gives you more room, so might be a good idea. We've got 3 bolts. We've got one here, 13mm head on it, and then there are 2 right above this rail. Once you've got the 3 of those out, just kind of rotate it down and out of the way. Now we'll be taking the jounce bumpers out of the way. Up inside here we've got a 13mm bolt. You're going to need a little bit of an extension. Get in there and we'll get it removed. And we'll repeat the same process on our passenger side. Now for the driver's side, we're going to move the upper bracket. It's marked left. We want to grab the shorter bolt. You're going to put a lock washer on there. It's going to go right up through like that, and we're going to secure it right in the hole the jounce stop came out of. These 2 tabs will be on the inside edge of the frame. To tighten that down, you'll need a 16mm wrench. Now we can repeat that same process over on the passenger side. Now we can assemble our spring and spacer block to our bracket. We're going to use the longer bolt, use the fender washer. It's usually easier just to guide the bolt up through one at a time. Bring that out, spacer on, and then that threads right into that weld nut. Now we're going to use a 17mm socket. We'll get this snug down. And once we have this one snug down, we'll do the same thing on our passenger side. Now we can take our Timbren stop. This is going to be mounted right above our axle. You'll see the tab, it kind of narrows down here. That's going to fit right in between the 2 U-bolts on the spring. So we'll bring that around the axle. It's important that we stay behind the brake lines and their sensor wire there. Make sure we're clearing everything. We can add the lower part of our clamp. Just like that. And on each side we're going to be putting on a flat washer and also a nylon lock nut. Now we can get this hardware snugged up. Want to tighten these down evenly. We'll use a 9/16 socket. Once we've got them snug, we'll torque them down to the specifications listed in our instructions. Now once we've got everything torqued down properly, we're ready to put our heat shield back in place and our spare tire if you decided to remove them. And that'll complete our installation of the Timbren rear axle suspension enhancement, part number TFR TT1504E on our 2016 Ford F-150.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.